Republicans are throwing up their arms in frustration about the Obama administration's delay to the Keystone Pipeline, the most recent delay kicking it down the road again. The Democratic Party, though, is split on the issue. In states where oil is a large part of the economy, people like Alaska's Mark Begich and Louisiana's Mary Landrieu are calling for the project's approval. They expressed frustration at the announcement coming this week. Others are rejecting this project for environmental reasons. Now in Washington, demonstrators are setting up camp for 6 days on the National Mall to protest the Keystone Pipeline. The group, the Cowboy and Indian Alliance, made up of ranchers, farmers, and indigenous leaders, are setting up teepees, as you see there, and covered wagons on the lawn. This is a protest from earlier this year. So is the administration putting politics before Congress or progress?
Joining us now, Republican Congressman Bob Latta of Ohio, a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Bob, we know you're in the midst of a district work period getting around your big district there in Ohio. We really appreciate you taking time to join us here on America's Forum.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Bob, we've both been around this for a while. We know that policy is based on politics, and when things are working the way they should, there's kind of a half and half mix. But this refusal of the administration to move forward on the Keystone Pipeline, can you explain the rationale of the administration behind that decision?
Well, I wish I'd be able to, because when you look at what happened again on Friday, Good Friday afternoon, and again, this is when the administration wanted to put this out, when they thought, again, no one would be paying attention. And they said, they're delaying it. And again, the delay the president wants is until after another election. And, back in 2011, there were quite a few of us who had a discussion one day, and some people thought that, well, the president's going to have to make a decision soon because of the labor unions that would be held in the construction. And I came to the conclusion that, the president was going to go with the environmentalists, and because he'd lose them, but he probably wouldn't lose labor. And so once again, he's picked the environmentalists over labor, you might say, in his party. But really what he's actually done, he's hurting the United States, because we're looking at a pipeline that would be about 1,700 miles long, a $7 billion private project by TransCanada. And, the State Department's even said that we're probably looking at least 40-some thousand, jobs during that time frame of construction to get this thing built, which, again, though, we'd have 830,000 more barrels of oil flowing into the United States that we'd be refining, that we'd be doing something with, that the, Americans would have jobs with. And listening to the Canadian ambassador on Friday, they're totally upset with his administration, because this thing's been, year after year after year, that they're not taking any type of action on, except always delaying it. And the Canadians don't have much of a choice here pretty soon. That they might have to build a pipeline to the east coast of Canada, of course, bypassing the United States, and again, hurting Americans.
Bob, we'll get into the whys and wherefores of sound public policy and the Keystone XL pipeline in just a minute. I do need to stay with the politics, however, because as you were outlining this, you mentioned the unions, which, and especially construction unions, traditionally have been the backbone of the Democrat Party. So you've got them on one side, and then you've got vulnerable Democrats such as Senator Mary Landrieu, the embattled Democrat down in Louisiana. Louisiana, obviously a place where they're interested in jobs. Why would the president sacrifice the midterms? He's not going to be on the ballot for a presidential election again. Why would he be serving up these Democrats basically as political sacrifices amidst this midterm election?
And I think, again, it comes right down to the politics of who he's with, and it's with the environmentalists. And so, we had a hearing one day that we had 5 individuals in. One of the individuals from TransCanada at the other end of the table was someone who was about representing 5 of the trades, and everybody was singing out the same hymnal. They want to get this thing going. And the Canadians want to get the oil down through the United States, and the unions want jobs. But this president, it's hard to believe when you hear the Democrats say that a construction job, well, that's not a permanent job. That's what they keep saying over and over and over. And they don't really understand how construction works. My best friend is in construction. then it's what you do is you build one project and you go to the next. But this is what, you know, if you remember the president's famous quote way back when it was a stimulus failure, well, I guess didn't understand what shovel-ready meant.
Well, you mentioned, but I'm wondering if, pardon the pun, since we're talking about oil, if we can drill down a little bit, exactly who benefits from this continued delay of Keystone XL pipeline construction?
Well, I think the only ones that are who might say they're claiming a victory again are the environmentalists that the president supports, and the folks that will also come up with dollars on that side during the campaign. And but when you look at the rest of it, it's really sacrificing North American energy independence for the United States. And, you know, the president has had a pretty much failed foreign policy. We can see what's happened over in the Crimea and the Ukraine. And when I've spoken with foreign ambassadors from Eastern Europe, you know, they would love to be able to buy LNG from the United States and say that we don't want to buy Russian energy. They want something from America. And when the United States now is the largest country in the world in being able to produce natural gas, we're going to pass Saudi Arabia in oil production in 2020. Why don't we want to become the world's, you know, number one producer of energy, but at the same time making sure that America is secure and safe, and saying that we don't need to buy oil or any other energy from any place else from the world except from North America. So it's just mind-boggling.
And the mind-boggling nature of this, Bob, leads me to the next question. If we were looking at how the American people would benefit, and I know you've outlined this earlier in our talk, but just to give us the bullet points right now, if that Keystone XL pipeline were operable today through the path proposed in the United States, how many jobs, how much energy, how much money are we talking about being pumped into the American economy?
Well, and again, it's first of all, you'd be looking at those construction jobs during. You're talking about, you know, after it would be all done. But even the State Department came out and said that there'd be at least 42,000 jobs during the construction. About 4,000 would be direct construction jobs. That's just what the State Department says. And then, but when you look at, again, what would be happening is we'd be able to have that oil coming into another pipeline. And you see, a lot of people, when they hear this, they think, oh, gee, we're not allowing a pipeline. But we have multiple pipelines coming in from Canada or from Mexico in the United States, crisscrossing. It's just, this only is the only line that the president has said he's not going forward with. But again, we would be able to have oil coming into the United States. We would be able to refine that, again, putting thousands of people to work there. You know, we would have more pipelines that need to be constructed because you'd have more places that would be going to. So it would help our independence again because we would have more resources out there to make sure into the future that we've got the energy needs that we have. Now, and some people say, well, you know, some of this energy might not stay in the United States. That's correct. That's Canadian oil.
It may be Canadian oil, but it's all important, John, and we do thank Congressman Bob Latta for his input. Let me offer a friendly amendment, and it's not in any way to be critical of Bob Latta, but I think that we ought to redefine exactly who we're talking about. They're not environmentalists. They're the new prohibitionists. The notion of people, I believe misguided, who want to stop economic interaction and really the whole march of mankind in terms of utilizing natural resources for economic benefit. To assume that these folks are genuinely interested in the environment, well, as we've seen from the curious funding of a variety of different quote-unquote green enterprises, the green has less to do with our environment and more to do with the money supplied in terms of campaigns to those on the left and the money, the taxpayer monies that end up going into these businesses, some of them that have failed abysmally. Can you say Solyndra?
Well,
so that's what we're looking at.
Solyndra is a great example, and you know, anybody who's really kind of looked into the numbers in this issue. Statistically, these pipelines tend to be safer than the way the oil is being transported now in trucks and trains. So that's one thing to consider for these environmentalists. Also, there's this guy, this Tom Steyer guy, who's donated a lot of money to liberal candidates. He's obviously opposed to the Keystone XL pipeline. We heard Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC, saying the president wasn't weighing politics. I don't know how she was able to say that, other than she's a politician, JD.
Well, sure. Here's what happens when you have a vulnerable president with who's in charge when you're running in a midterm. Oh, this election is not about the president. This election is about local concerns. And believe me, I know I've been in that situation. 2006 with George W. Bush. Didn't help me that year. I finished second. As always, a midterm becomes a de facto referendum on the performance of the administration.
But ridiculous to say politics is not involved.
Oh, politics is involved. One other note, Warren Buffett may be a good guy, but he likes having that energy shipped via rail. Your thoughts on this, invited and solicited. You can reach us via Twitter @Newsmax TV, #America's Forum. Stay with us.